Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Vigigame Guy here. Today is going to be the first episode of my series, Journey Through the Universal Century. While I consider myself a Gundam fan, having seen Seed, Wing, both Build Divers, the first season of IBO, really need to watch the second one, and both seasons of Double O, I've actually never seen the original Universal Century stuff. Besides Unicorn, which I loved, but barely understood, because I hadn't seen all its predecessors. That's why I've decided to watch all the mainline Universal Century shows in release order and document my opinions on them here on YouTube to garner discussion and document my experience. Welcome to the Journey Through the Universal Century. In today's episode, we're going to cover Mobile Suit Gundam 0079, the movie trilogy. And before anyone freaks out, I watched the Zeta series, not the movies, so I dodged a bullet there from what I hear. My spoiler-free quick review before we really dive into what I thought was that it was pretty good. The animation is definitely hard to get used to at first, but as you watch, you come to have more of an appreciation for it, and I actually started to really enjoy it. I definitely lost some of the deeper character development by watching the movies instead of the series, but overall, I still thought the characters were okay, but we'll go more into detail about that in a bit. I definitely feel the plot could sometimes confuse me, but I think I got the gist of it. I might have missed some nuance, what with all the different aspects and interpretation of war and politics and new type abilities, of course, that can be seen in some of these shows. Overall, I think it's a good watch for Gundam and Mecha fans, and it's good to see where it all started, but it definitely could be a much harder watch without any pre-understanding or expectations, as the show is 40 years old at this point. The rest of this video is full spoiler and discussion, by the way, so if you haven't seen 0079 yet, this is your spoiler warning. Please go watch it and come back to watch my video. So first we're going to go over characters. I'm a very character-driven person when it comes to shows, and as I said before, I definitely think I lost a bit of characterization by watching the movie trilogy instead of the series version, which might have slightly hampered my opinions, but I don't think it's that big a deal, as the show was still pretty good. I don't have much to say about characters outside of Char and Amuro, but that's definitely better than having too many negative things to say about characters. Zeta Gundam. As for Amuro, which is where we're going to start, as he's our main character, he definitely falls on the reluctant warrior side instead of the borderline psychopath side of the Gundam protagonist chart. But I found it hard to like him at first, as he acted a lot like a jerk early on, especially in his interactions with Fraubo, who should have been the person he was nicest to, considering how long they've been together, how long they've known each other. I do think it makes sense, though, as to why he whines and doesn't want to fight, as he was thrown into a war he didn't want anything to do with, and was all of a sudden thrust to the spot as the hero, and the only hope in a lot of these cases. That obviously is a lot of pressure and stress, which can explain his behavior. He's additionally thrown off as his new type abilities begin to develop, and at this point in the Universal Century, new types are pretty much considered a myth. So he has to get through it himself, as no one else has any understanding, really, of what he's going through or what the heck's going on at all. If there's one thing I think that was weird to me, though, was I never really understood the weird relationship and rivalry he had with Char. That is, pre him killing Lala, and the drug trip that ensued after that. I felt these were just two people who met on the battlefield a few times, yet seemed to have some kind of weirdly intense rivalry going on. The relationship definitely makes sense after Lala is introduced and subsequently killed, but before that, not really to me. Out of all the protagonists I've seen in many different Gundam shows, though, I definitely feel like I have the least to say about Amuro at this point. Because unlike other shows where the story begins and ends here, the Universal Century is sprawling, and as I finished Zeta at the time of this recording, Amuro starts to make more of an impression on me in that show as his character arc continues to be ongoing, and I really can't wait to see where it goes in Char's counterattack, which then maybe you'll have more to say. Speaking of Char, though, I definitely think Char was the best part of 0079. with his witty plans, abusing his position, and his massive charisma, which he used to eliminate the Zabi family, despite being a part of Zeon himself. It made him almost seem like a completely separate faction in a primarily two-faction at war-driven show. He was also a fantastic pilot for someone who, at least at the time, it could be debated has no new type abilities. Watching his relationship with Lala that devolved into a rage towards Amuro for killing her, giving him purpose after his only other purpose, killing the Zabis, was pretty much achieved. It was also a great arc and provided a lot of moments for his character. It really did feel like we had two protagonists, which is something I love to see in a show, if they do it right. And I feel 0079 definitely did. And of course, his final battle with Amuro at Aoba Aku was also super awesome to watch. But Char is definitely in the same boat as Amuro at this point, in that their arcs aren't over, and they will continue to develop. Heck, Char is my favorite character in Zeta Gundam, and plays a major part, and I would hope he does in a movie, named after himself, after all. As for the other characters, pretty much every other character kind of felt flat. This could probably be blamed on watching the movie trilogies of the show, but the only other one that really sticks out to me is Kai Shiden, because I didn't even understand why he was on the ship and fighting at all at first. He just seemed like some asshole that randomly got involved, but didn't really care. But his arc with the underwater mobile suits and that girl that died was surprisingly emotional and developed his character. Other than that, Frau was the girl Amuro should have ended up with, but Amuro blew it because he's an asshole to her all the time. Sayla was Char's sister and just wanted to stop his constantly dangerous tirade for revenge. Bright was the captain and only actual military personnel on the White Base, and the classic scene. You know what I'm talking about. And then on Zeon's side, we've got Ramba Raw, who had a kind of cool arc with the whole chivalry thing and helping Amuro rekindle his flame for fighting. Dozel piloting Big Zam, the girl that did new type experiments, which led into the Lala Char arc right before Aoba Aku that was really interesting. And the other dude that was compared to Hitler, that guy. But now we can move on from characters and into the plot. And when it comes to the actual plot and plot points, I feel that 0079 is the most straightforward of the Gundam shows I've watched. It was a lot of the White Base did this, and now Zeon is involved. Zeon did this, now the White Base is involved, and or the Federation is fighting them. I mean, the most complex pieces felt like the Federation's abusal of the White Base under the pretense of the crew being new types, which Captain Bright calls out multiple times, where the Federation is practically sending the White Base on a suicide mission.
What, we some kind of suicide squad?
Despite most of the crew consisting of civilians and even children. Though the three main kids did end up back on the ship of their own accord, so they're kind of exceptions. This definitely hits at the sinister side of the Federation, which we'll see more of in Zeta, though Zeon is made out to be the clear bad guys. In a lot of Gundam shows, I usually see both sides. In fact, I feel this is an area where Seed, which was essentially a remake of 0079 with a lot of changes, but the basic things are there. I felt that Seed surpassed the original in that both sides and Seed were fighting more for their own causes and had more reasonable reasons for what they did, in my opinion. Coordinators just made a lot more sense and were more compelling to me than Zeon. I mean, in 0079, the majority of Zeon are pretty much made out to be horrible, with a few exceptions such as Ramba Raw and later Lala, but she was an experiment, so who knows what's going on there. I get they're fighting for Spacenoid independence, which is admirable and all. I mean, that's what Zeta Gundam protagonists are pretty much all fighting for, but it really felt like they weren't all that redeemable, and most of them were doing it for personal gain and or to establish a monarch system or dictatorship instead of actually freeing the Spacenoids. At least the main leaders seemed bad. Looking at you, Hitler boy. Though there is an argument to be made that the Zeon had a point, or at least a better system with their rule than was kind of addressed in 0079, but that's to address in a later video, as that's not actually covered in the 0079 movie trilogy, It's a hindsight thing you see in Zeta and a little bit of Double Zeta, as I'm about halfway through Double Zeta at this point of recording. Again, the best plot point, though, was Char and his revenge story, and the idea of the next evolution humanity, new types, which I felt were barely explained at all, but I might have just missed some details. Feel free to leave a comment if you think I missed something important. New types seem to have a heavier focus in the next show, and whether that's a good thing or bad is for you to decide yourself, but you'll see what I thought when the next episode of this series comes out. And for the final segment, I just want to talk about the part everybody loves, the goddamn mobile suits. I'm just going to throw some pictures of the mobile suits I remember most up on the screen one by one and give my quick thoughts on each one. As for the RX-78-2, it's pretty basic looking, but it's where it all started, so that's to be expected. And honestly, the sleek humanoid design is actually pretty cool. Love the beam sabers on the backpack, and really I don't have much else to say other than it is the original Gundam, so obviously it's pretty dang cool. As for the Zaku, it was cool to see the mono-eyed suits. I like the aesthetic, but again, it's very minimal, as it's pretty much just an all-green suit with some crazy abilities. The B-Max is an interesting thing to see, and I kind of enjoyed that. Definitely worthy of being our main grunt suit. And then we have the gun cannon. Honestly, I love this thing. I don't know why I love the gun cannon so much. Maybe because it kind of reminds me of a Power Ranger, but with giant cannons on their shoulders. Huh. Maybe that is why I love it. As for the gun tank, though, it's kind of got a weird design. I mean, it's okay. Don't really have much to say, except why can the head split off if it becomes useless afterwards? Because there was in the desert episode, I think it was the one where Sayla left in the Gundam, he splits off with the headpiece, and then, like, the head just... Either the head or the body, I can't remember which half, is just completely useless after the split off, which is like, why does it even split then? That seems pointless. For the core fighter and core booster, I really like the colors, the blue, red, and like yellow aesthetic going on. I mean, the fighter jet thing, I've always thought fighter jets are really cool. It's got that fire jet aesthetic going, and it flies around and shoots enemies out of the sky with lasers. So, I mean... Gotta love that, right? Then we have the Joof, which, you know, it's just a horned Zaku, essentially. But it's got that cool electric whip and isn't a Zaku.
This is no Zaku, boy! No Zaku!
We got that, and then the Dom, or the Rick Dom, since they're pretty much the same thing, is kind of the gun cannon of Zeon for me, as I don't know why I like it so much, but I do. The cool one eye and pure black and plus sign with the awesome purple and red head color scheme. Plus, it's got a big bazooka and a yellow beam saber, which are both real cool touches. And then there's the Gelgoog, which I like the Gelgoog just because of its name. The Gelgoog, I think Gelgoog is a hilarious name, and it rolls off the tongue nice and sounds cool. I really did enjoy the Gelgoog, and I do like the headpiece, and the curved beam saber was really, really dope. And then the Zeong. I thought the Zeong was interesting, as it was kind of like the first Saikamu system thing mobile suit we got. It was interesting that they were like, we didn't put the legs on it, but of course then one of the guys goes, but the legs are just for aesthetics, which is cool to think of, because, you know, we're not in gravity, and most of the time the legs are for the aesthetics. And I mean, if you're gonna have like a space mobile suit, you don't really need the legs. I thought that was an interesting touch for them to say. The head splitting off is cool, and then all of it's like random attacks and like wiry, and like I think it could shoot out the hands with like wires and stuff, so like an early version of a funnel. Very interesting. But of course, last but certainly not least, drum roll please, Peep Guy.
Hana looks pretty cool. Hey, Big Zen!
In conclusion, I think the 0079 movie trilogy was pretty darn good, but, and I might get attacked for this, I don't think it's a great starting point for getting someone into the Gundam franchise.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Because of the art and pacing. It's not really that slow, and you kind of appreciate and enjoy the art, but I definitely think it'd be hard to start someone off with this show in the modern era. What with the average shorter attention spans and all the animation advances that have been made, heck, this is the oldest show I've probably ever watched. The closest thing I think of is like the original Tom and Jerry, but now I'm getting sidetracked. The point is, I definitely think this show was a great start to the franchise for its time, but I don't think it's a great first Gundam show just to introduce someone. But definitely, if you're a Mecha or a Gundam fan, it's a must-see. If you disagree, feel free to leave why down in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video and want to see more content, please like and subscribe. And feel free to leave a comment on what other stuff you'd like to see me cover on the channel. Feel free to also leave some tips on what you'd like to see as the series progresses. I'd also love to hear what you think I can improve on and want to see more of. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys in another video. Later.